So today is September 25th, 2024, aka my 30th birthday. And yeah, I guess it's official. At least I technically it's not official yet. Like it won't be official until what, like 6 p.m. tonight, but anyway, we're close enough. Like I've been on this earth for 3 decades, and in those 3 decades I have made friends and lost friends, and made money and lost money, and built businesses and sold businesses, and bought houses and sold houses. And there's a lot that's happened over the last 3 decades. And the fact is, there could have been a lot more progress made a lot more quickly had I just known a few things prior, right? And I think everybody says that, like, your 20s are really a phase in your life, like your teenage years and your 20s are really a phase in your life that's meant for figuring out what it is that you want to do, right? Like you're trying to figure life out, figure yourself out, figure the world out, those sorts of things. And then the third decade of your life, your 30s, should really be about doing it, doing the thing that you figured out. Well, believe it or not, we're here. And this video that has a ridiculously long intro that most people will probably skip because it's like over 2 minutes long, is about the advice that I would have given myself in my 20s if I had the chance, right? Things I wish I knew in my 20s, lessons I learned in my 20s, whatever, working title, but you get the idea. Despite what other people say, kindness actually isn't a weakness. However, not having boundaries is. So what I mean by that is, like, we've heard time and time again that, you know, nice guys finish last and kindness is a weakness, and neither of those things are true. It's actually the opposite. So what I found is you reap what you sow, right? And that's also biblical. The thing is like, if we're not intentional about limiting the amount of time, energy, attention, resources that we give other people, then they can sometimes take a mile. Like there's definitely more tit for tat and people out there, and way more, like we'll say takers out there, than there are people who are naturally generous. So if you are a naturally generous person, then you may just want to consider who you're being generous to and the circumstances under which you're being generous. Because other people aren't going to check in on you and make sure that you're all right, right? They're not going to make sure that you have enough finances. They're not going to make sure that you have the energy or the food or the love or the affection or the attention that you need. And so if you really want to make sure that you're being fulfilled in that way, and that your love tank is full, and that your energy is full, your social battery is full, your bank account is full, your pantry is full, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you're the one who's being a good steward over that first. And am I taking care of myself? Because if you're not taking care of yourself, then how are you supposed to effectively take care of other people? Extremely important. Get comfortable being alone and make it a regular practice. So one of the blessings that I think, so for me, one of the hugest blessings when it came to COVID in particular was the fact that we did all go on lockdown, and we did have to spend more time with ourselves or with our family members or whoever was in our houses. So I know there were a lot of people who like weren't necessarily a fan, but there are a ton of people who were, and I'm included in that. So as an introvert, now I'm realizing that I'm an introvert, but at the time during COVID, I actually thought I was an extrovert. Come to find out, I was just an introvert that was really lonely. And the only reason why I was able to figure that out in the first place is because of the isolation that I had to go with during the pandemic or right after the pandemic. So anyway, what's the whole point of being alone and making it a regular practice? Well, when we talk to other people, when we play games, like when we go out in public and just spend any time or energy with other people in any way, shape or form, like while it can feel good, introvert or extrovert, the detriment to that is that you end up being distracted, or you can be influenced by these other people, right? But if I spend more time with myself, like especially if I'm not absorbing or consuming outside sources like, you know, music or videos or anything like that, like genuinely just spending time with me, like not with other people recorded, not with other people's voices, like just me, what happens is, like, all of a sudden I have to do some self-reflection. Like it just automatically happens. As a matter of fact, if you're the kind of person who has a hard time going to sleep at night and your brain is like like just rushing you with a bunch of thoughts that seem random. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. They may be stressful, they may be not. But this doesn't happen to you during any other time. It only really happens to you when you're trying to go to sleep at night. Or if you're the kind of person that does their best thinking in the shower or does their best thinking on the toilet, then what you're experiencing is exactly what I'm talking about. If we're just intentional about spending time alone, away from media, away from music, away from podcasts, away from videos, away from other people, at least like, let's just say like 30 to 45 minutes a day, just without any other outside influences, what happens is our brains start processing all of the information that we're constantly feeding it, and we start coming up with our own thoughts and ideas. So a lot of people will tell me and have told me like, oh, Javon, you're a creative person and you think of so many deep and wonderful ideas. But here's the thing. I just take time by myself, and that's it. Like, that's the secret. So if you're the kind of person who's constantly distracting themselves with other people or other sources of entertainment, like, just think about or consider spending 30 to 45 minutes by yourself every day, making that a regular practice, and just watch what kind of ideas and thoughts and processes you come up with. And you may even start to change some of your own self-limiting beliefs, right? You may start to realize, wow, like these things that I thought were problems aren't really problems. And because I spent 30 to 45 minutes a day thinking for a second about those problems, I was then able to come up with real solutions that worked for me instead of asking somebody or Googling something or just simply ruminating on it, like while listening to sad music, like I used to do previously, because the music can distract me from the actual problem solving process that could be going on if I just spent a little more time by myself. The ultimate key to your success lies in your relationship with God. And just so we're clear, I feel like this is something that's probably cliche, at least I hear it a lot, but hear me out, right? So whenever we're doing anything at all, I think part of the reason why it can be hard to be inspired or motivated to do something is because of our lack of meaning or purpose behind the thing that we're doing. But when you start living for God instead of yourself, when you start living for God instead of, you know, your family or whatever, like all of a sudden, like that's the largest cause that you could ever put yourself under. And so this is something that I experienced, not necessarily just with religion, but when I was in the military, this was the first time that I started to do something that was quote unquote bigger than me, right? And when I started doing something that was bigger than myself, it gave me way more inspiration, way more motivation. There was a sense of community and camaraderie behind that thing, right? And it made it a lot easier to continue to go. And I was motivated to continue to go, continue to grow, and continue to do things for the military, despite how it made me feel, right? Like one of the core values is service before self. But the whole reason why was because there was this larger mission, right? This larger mission that I was a part of, right? This larger vision that I was a part of. And it felt very gratifying to be a part of that. And so what happens when we align ourselves with the creator of the universe is essentially the same thing, right? We're aligning ourselves with a mission that's significantly larger than we'll ever be able to imagine, right? Like while we're here on earth. As a matter of fact, it's written in the Bible. Like his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are greater than our ways. So what I'm saying is, when we have this profound sense of purpose and meaning that supersedes ourselves, it then becomes easier to do the work consistently. But not only that, whenever you're trying to achieve anything, right? If we want to achieve anything great or anything significant, there's going to be obstacles, right? There are going to be obstacles and things that make achieving that more difficult. Well, it's great to have a foundation, to have a spiritual foundation with Christ, with God, because what happens is, like, you start relying on him in those times that are scary or difficult. So I may not necessarily have faith in my ability to stop speaking to a person, or may not necessarily have faith in my ability to take on a new project, but all things work for the good of those who love God. And I know that. And so if I trust God and I operate in faith while putting forth the actual works to do the thing, right? Because faith and works are important. If I do both of those things and combine them, it then becomes unreasonable to succeed. Maybe not the first time, but even then, once again, looking at scripture, right? Like, all things work for the good of those who love God. And so if I didn't succeed, or if I didn't get the result that I desired the first time around, I can still look at it as a learning and growing experience. And maybe that's what God wanted me to learn. If if I do something multiple times and experience resistance while doing that thing, and it just doesn't seem to be working out almost in this supernatural way, then maybe that's not what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm actually being guided onto another path that's more aligned with who I am and who God wants me to be. So those are all of the things that I think about, and ultimately, like, those lessons, and I know there's a lot of lessons there, they're infinitely more, right? But all of those lessons really start with the foundation of God, studying the Bible and coming to an understanding of what's written there, because there's so much wisdom to be grabbed from the Bible, right? And really there's a lot of peace and a lot of motivation and a lot of inspiration and a lot of meaning meant to be found under or through a relationship with Christ. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And what I mean by this, it's not anything malicious. I'm not talking about holding grudges or not forgiving people. I think it's extremely important to forgive people, but also going back to the first point, right? Boundaries are also important. And so if somebody is late to things, right? The first, the second, the third time, believe them the first time. If someone tells you they're going to do something and then they don't, believe them the first time. When someone says that they're going to give you something, or I guess that's the same as the second point that I just said, but the point is, like, it also applies to positive things as well, right? So if somebody is constantly early, or if someone is early to things, or if they're on time, or if they say they're going to do something and then they do that thing and then a little bit more and they over deliver, like, ultimately we should believe them. And what we need to understand is, as a matter of fact, I would even make the argument that that believing people the first time when it comes to the positive actions that they take is extremely important, because one of the things that we're prone to do as human beings is negative bias. And so negative bias dictates that we're going to focus on the negative things and the flaws of people more than we will the positives. But if we're intentional and we actually take the time, energy, and effort to really acknowledge, speak out loud, write down, and focus on the positive things that people show us, we can then get a good baseline for the positive ways that they can impact our lives. And then if we also take the time to, acknowledge the negative as well, we can know what to expect in the future, in order to shield ourselves from any possible frustration, disappointment, whatever the case may be, right? Because the issue isn't the person who's late, right? Like, you don't really have an issue when somebody is late to things all the time. The real issue is when you expect them to be on time and then they're late. But if you know ahead of time that there's somebody who's going to be late, well, that's just them operating their nature, right? This is the reason why nobody really blinks an eye or gets devastated whenever a police officer or firefighter passes away. But when a civilian does, well, then it's a problem. It's about the expectation, not about the actual thing that happened. It's perfectly okay to say no. So this kind of goes back to number one and about having boundaries. One of the things that I needed to learn very early in my life is it's perfectly okay to say no, and I would say yes to everything. This was trying to hang out with people. When people would ask to borrow things from me, I would say yes. There was even a time when I was in elementary school and I was getting bullied, and we went to the principal's office, and at the principal's office, my bully was going to be punished, right, for bullying me, and they asked to essentially be spared. And then I said yes. And then the bullying continued. And so the whole lesson behind this is it's perfectly okay to say no. And people pleasing or saying yes too often is not only going to be a disservice to you, but it's also going to be a disservice to the people that you're actually trying to serve at the highest level. So if your intention is to have a positive impact on the people in your life, and I think that's most of our intentions, right, then it is actually better to let people know when you can only be there for them in a limited capacity. It is actually better to let that person know that you can't lend them money because you don't have it right now. It's actually better for you to allow the bully to get their punishment so they can actually build their character and become a better version of themselves. So those are the things. There are times when it is necessary for us to mitigate or intervene and say no. There are also times where allowing processes to happen and allowing things to grow is necessary, and that's when the yeses come into play, right? Stepping into the unknown is necessary, and that's when the yes comes into play, right? Stepping into the uncomfortable and stepping into discomfort is necessary. And so that's when yeses come into play. And so I just think it's important to know when to say yes and when to say no, especially no. Most people don't have an issue saying yes to things, right? But they do have an issue when it comes to saying no. Hey, I just started not drinking. I would love if you could support me when it comes to not drinking. Then you go to the party, and once you're at the party, somebody offers you a drink and you say yes. What's that about? Always seek discomfort. Always seek discomfort. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about going to the club and sitting in like the super sweaty section with all the big dudes, like big back dudes who are sitting in the corner by themselves. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about when I'm saying seek discomfort is like going out, understanding that it's going to be a difficult process. Yes, the thing, like the skill that you want to learn is not something that you know how to do. Being a beginner and feeling stupid is a part of the process. Like Babe Ruth didn't just come out of his mother's womb hitting home runs. Like, no, he was in Little League or Pee Wee or whatever, just like everybody else at one point. Needed to learn how to swing a bat and naturally got better at it. Like, don't get me wrong, a foundation of talent is something that does exist, but you'll never know if you have the talent for something unless you start. And so if the intention is to get into something new, whether that be e-commerce, digital marketing, playing a new instrument, exercise, yoga, making new friendships and relationships, magic tricks, whatever, like it doesn't matter what it is, comedy, like if you're trying to actually get better at something or start doing something, understand that discomfort is 100% part of the process. If you're somebody that's used to starting new things and you don't have an issue with starting new things, but you get like 2, 3, 6 months into something and then you find yourself jumping ship to try something new, understand that discomfort and like it not feeling good being part of the process. Like there's something called the hedonic curve, and you can look at the hedonic curve if you ever want to look it up, right? And so it basically, the hedonic curve indicates that whenever we find ourselves in a new position or a new state, our emotional state is going to change, right? So when we try that new thing, it's really exciting. We're learning a bunch of stuff. Everything is brand new. New toy syndrome sits in, and it's like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is what I was meant to do. This is exactly where I need to be. Wow, this is great. Dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit. And then what happens is we realize that whatever the new thing is that we're starting, it requires work, right? And so when we understand or experience that for the first time, we'll say like, wow, this is so much work than I thought. Wow, so many unexpected things. Wow, maybe I wasn't really meant to do this. And this is completely normal, right? So we have this high at the beginning and then we have this low afterwards. It's called the valley of despair, right? But what happens once we hit the valley of despair is like, we'll start to slowly come out of it. And as we come out of it, this is us overcoming those challenges that we identified while we're still new to the journey, right? We were very new at the beginning, and that's the reason why everything felt good. And then we got a little bit of experience and realized that, oh, this is imperfect, just like everything else in the world, because I live on Earth and the universe is not perfect, right? And then like, once that happened, we eventually start to overcome those challenges if we're consistent and we seek discomfort. And what happens when we do that is we overcome, we get better, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, but it lasts longer because it's attributed to a higher sense of accomplishment and something that took more time to develop. And we then become okay with it, right? So it's basically an up, then a down, and then it's a plateau. And so the thing is, like, when it comes to seeking discomfort, especially as it pertains to choosing a new thing to do, right? A new venture, a new exercise routine, a new diet, whatever it is that we're trying. One saying that I really like is this one, right? So it's the best partner is the one that you stick with. The best meal plan or the best diet is the one that you stick with, right? The best business is that you continue to show up for every day. And so the thing that makes it special isn't the thing itself, it's your commitment to it, right? Seek discomfort and stay committed. By the way, we're about halfway through this video. If you like this video, then like feel free to like it, comment on it. Let me know exactly what your thoughts are. Give me some advice that's helped you over the years. I'd really appreciate that because I want to get better too. And consider subscribing to the channel. There are 100% going to be more videos coming out in the future. There are already some that are scheduled a few months in advance, all the way up until New Year's. And there's a video that's dropping on New Year's Day. There's more content that'll be coming out after that, but you get the idea. Anyway, let's keep going with the video. Sometimes it's okay to keep your mouth shut even when you're right. Like, the intention shouldn't be to win the argument. It's perfectly okay to just nod your head even if you're right during a debate or an argument or whatever. sometimes people just need to go through the process themselves and experience things for themselves. And it's more important in most cases to preserve the relationship than it is to force information down somebody's throat. Like, the most you can do is present the information to somebody, and if they want to take the information, then great. But if they don't, well, that's their prerogative. You need to respect that, and you need to allow them to go through the process themselves. And if they end up burning themselves or hurting themselves in any way, shape, or form, a told you so isn't necessary. What is necessary is being for them on the off chance that you were so right on something that they do actually hurt themselves in a traumatic or detrimental way. Be there for people. Offer them information. If they accept it, great. And if not, let them do what they need to do in order to become a better version of themselves. It's not up to you to control their process. That point also brings me to point number 8, right? Yeah, something like that. But if they don't ask for instruction, don't force it onto them, right? So, and yeah, it 100% has to do a little bit with what we talked about previously. So this isn't just for you, and it's not just for them, right? Like, when we force information onto somebody or force instruction on somebody, hey, this is how you do the thing, but they never asked you, what happens is, at least, and this is the case, and this is the reason why I will give this tip or this information or this advice to 20-year-old me or me in my 20s, is because I've actually lost a lot of relationships this way, right? I've had a really hard time over the years of just telling people what to do, even when they don't ask. And what happens when you do that, even if it comes from a place of care, even if you do want to see the best for them, is a lot of times people will take it in a condescending way. And so when they ask you for advice and then you give it to them, it hits a little different. And so it's really important to just do that. Like, lead by example, build your life up, become the kind of person that God wants you to be. And hopefully that's the kind of person that other people admire and aspire to be. And through that work, like, they will then start to ask questions that'll motivate or inspire them to ask you questions, and then you can answer them in a really intentional way. And that's a very effective way to help people. What's not effective is, man, I don't like what you're doing, so I'm going to tell you how to fix your life. And then when you hear that advice, whether I'm correct or not, it's just going to make you feel condescending, it's going to make you feel like I'm being condescending. It's going to damage our relationship, and ultimately you're not going to take the advice in the first place. So I wasted my time, my energy, and probably did some damage to our relationship. Like, that's just not good for anybody, right? So in order to fix all of that, only ask, like only give people instruction when they ask for it. That's it. The funny thing is, this next one is actually something that I tweeted about or wrote a Facebook post about when I was 19. So and it came up yesterday. I believe it came up yesterday on my Facebook feed, right? So I'm going to read this point, and then I'm going to go to Facebook and I'm going to read what I actually said on Facebook, because I think that, like, that was perfect. I don't need to find different words in order to describe that. But people with differing opinions are the ones worth listening to, sometimes the most, right? And let me just go to Facebook and read what I put. I'll read what I put there. I think that'll do more good than me trying to put it in my own words now. Time flies and people grow. Our experiences in life have been unbelievably... Okay, here we go. Time flies and people grow. Our experiences in life have been unbelievably different from one another's after high school, and ultimately I think that kind of variety is what makes the world so beautiful. Keep growing, keep experiencing new things, and respect the beliefs of others. As the beliefs that contradict yours may be the culmination of life lessons much different from your own. Share and receive alike. You never know what may come from it. And what I was essentially saying is that people have all kinds of backgrounds and experience all kinds of different things, right? We have all different kinds of like wins and blessings in life. We have all different kinds of family members. We were all parented differently. Some people weren't parented at all. Religious backgrounds, foods that we've eaten, countries that we've come from, languages that we've spoken, people that we've been exposed to. And as a result of all of these different experiences, different beliefs have been formed, different identities have been formed, different preferences have been formed. And the wonderful thing about, especially if you're somebody who has the great fortune of using the internet or living in the United States, is you have complete access to other people with different perspectives. And so by exploring those other perspectives and speaking to different people from different backgrounds, you then have the opportunity to learn more about yourself, about the world, about cultures in general, about different personality types, and then about different parenting styles. And then because you have more information, a more variety of of information, you then have the ability to make more optimal decisions for yourself and for the people around you, like if you're a parent or something like that. And that's only possible if you surround yourself with people with different opinions. If you stay trapped in what's called an echo chamber, right? If everybody like you has the same beliefs as you and the same thought process as you and the same background as you, and if they're all the same ethnicity and the same, same preferences when it comes to living conditions and like all of those things, the issue is that you prevent yourself from having the ability to really have a broader perspective and make more well-informed decisions, because you're limiting the information and you're limiting the information that you have access to by not connecting with people with different backgrounds, right? You just simply don't know as much. And ultimately, you can only make decisions based on the information that you know, right? So I would say lean into the unknown, lean into the unknown unknowns, and the unknown unknowns will be exposed to you through those different perspectives of relationships. Connect with different people, different backgrounds, different beliefs, and just watch how much wider your perspective gets. Look at how much more you get exposed to. And yeah, it's a great thing. And this is the second to last one. And this is kind of like a sister point of the last one, right? So build a circle that you admire, not one that you have a bunch in common with. And what I mean by that is like, well, if I want to become the best version of myself, right, it's going to be a lot easier and it's going to make a lot more sense for me to find myself on that trajectory by modeling myself after people who actually have the things that I want, right? So actually, this is a real world example. So for example, like I'm somebody who's single and I don't have kids, but I want to have kids and I want to have a great marriage in the future. So if I want those things, it would behoove me to make friends with excellent husbands and excellent fathers, right? So if I hang out with men who are great husbands to their wives and great fathers to their children, then I can model myself and some of my behavior after them and ask them some questions. And just by hanging out with them, like I'll become more like those people. And what happens as a result of that is I will find myself around more, I'll find myself attracting more of the kind of things that they have, because I've been modeling myself to a certain degree after those men, right? So and like that's just kind of a micro example. It's really difficult to be the fat friend if all of your friends are bodybuilders and eat really clean. Like if we're all going to clean restaurants and getting clean things all of the time, like I don't want to be the one guy that orders, the fat boy pasta or whatever the case is, the fat boy burger, when everybody else is getting the muscle, the muscle head meatloaf or whatever the case is. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, who do you want to be? Put yourself in a room with the people who actually model that person, right? Not the people who model who you are now. If you model yourself, or if you stay around people who model who you are now, you'll just stay around people who are like who you are now. That's it. Anyway, I could keep going on for forever, right? There are tons of lessons that I've gotten up until this point that I'd like to share to 20-year-old me. But I'm just going to leave with one more, and that's that the Bible is the ultimate guide to life. And once again, this might sound kind of cliche, but the Bible is actually a culmination of 66 different books. And within those books, you have biographies of different people. You get to learn about entire people's lives, right? You get to learn about adultery and how that's affected people. You get to learn about murder and how that's affected people. You get to learn about all the ups and downs, and you get to learn from the flaws of all these other people. Not only that, but there's this one book. It's the book of Proverbs, right? And so the book of Proverbs is written by Solomon, and Solomon said to be the wisest man that ever lived. Not only that, but this guy had like tons of wives. He had tons of money. Like he was a wise and a wealthy dude, right? And lived in abundance in so many ways, shapes, and forms. And he wrote a book called Proverbs. And so you can go, and by the way, like Solomon is a real historical figure. So like whether you believe in the Bible or not, whether you're Christian or not, you can go and read the book of Proverbs and just get tons and tons and tons of wisdom. So I highly recommend reading the book of Proverbs, at least starting there, and then maybe exploring some of the rest of the Bible, because the entire book in and of itself, like it is an historical document, and it's the one with the most copies ever, right? Like ever. It's considered it's worth reading. But anyway, like that's essentially the video. If you like this, then like consider subscribing, I guess. And I appreciate you. And yeah. Happy birthday to me. Peace.